Hey, everybody. Last week we talked about how to talk about your money. Well, today we're going to do that some more. This is part two. That's today on the Financial Wellness Podcast.
Welcome to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. Here is your host, financial problem solver and talk show host, Dave Hagan.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Financial Wellness Podcast, or the TFWP, as we like to talk about it. Coming to you from Van Nuys, California, Topanga, California, and even San Diego, California. And you know who's down there? The Big A. How you doing, Nick?
Hey, Davey Hagan. Doing well over here.
Good to see you. Weather's good down there?
Can't complain.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Well, remember last week, Nick, we were talking about how to talk about your money. And we talked about the fact that people seem to disclose an awful lot of stuff, especially younger generations. And we talked about how easy it seems to be to disseminate that information. And we came up with 12 tips for talking about your money. And those 12 tips were: number one, what is right is up to you. Number two, don't ever disseminate your passwords. 3, thinking about scripting your responses in advance. Number 4, how you talk about your money may be different at work, when you're with friends, or when you're with family. Number 5, everyone counts your money, so be careful. Number 6, people love to gossip, so assume that your information will go everywhere. Number 7, be careful, you might have non-disclosures regarding your income at work. Number 8, if you must disclose, be general. Number 9, don't brag. Number 10, don't be judgmental. Number 11, don't try to keep up. And number 12, if you do talk about your financial wellness plan. And that's when we ran out of time, but we had a lot of stuff we still wanted to say. So Nick said, hey, let's make a part 2 of this. Let's come back next week and finish talking about this. You up for that, Nick?
Yeah, let's do it, Dave.
Let's do it. So what we were talking about, now we've got these 12 ways to talk about your money. I want to talk about how you disclose information with respect to different kinds of assets, or different kinds of income, or different aspects of your financial condition, because I think it's different also with each asset. And the first thing, obviously, that I thought about is, what about your salary? Is salary something you talk about?
You know, for me, I have no problem disclosing it. I'm more of an open book.
Yeah.
I don't make that much money, but I'm also, I also feel it's okay to talk about. I don't feel snobby, but I don't feel embarrassed, I guess is the word I'm looking for how much I make. And so I feel comfortable doing it. But, am I going to do it on the air? Probably not.
Well, you got to know your audience. You got to know who's listening. But how about this? Let's say a year from now, and your income, you're working as an attorney, and your income is 10 times what you're making now. How are you going to feel talking about that, to say at the Thanksgiving table? You going to feel comfortable with that?
You know what, Dave? I would bless my lucky stars if that would be the fact. I would bless my lucky stars. And you know what, just for purpose's sake, let's just say, yes, I will. I have nothing to be, ashamed of, nothing to be embarrassed about. And, if someone really wants to know, and I think they have no ill intent, they're not going to use it to hurt me, I don't see why not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where we're different. We're different generations. I don't think I would. I don't want there to be any jealousy or animus, and I don't want to appear that I'm, bragging or boasting, which would be easy to do if I had an income that was, times 10. I don't know that I would. I might talk to a coworker about it if they were looking to make more. But again, I would be kind of general about it. And I'm using a lot of the tips that we've talked about. But salary can be kind of a touchy issue and can build bad feelings. So I don't know. I think I'd be a little more close to the vest than you would. But again, to each his own.
But also I think, going back to part one, it's knowing your audience, knowing who you're talking to. And that's what I meant by, as long as someone does not have an ill feeling about what I'm saying. Like, for example, I brought up, the hypothetical in part one about, if someone wants to work their way up and they want to know how much I make. I think that's a fair question. But, if someone wants to use it to hurt me in some way, or if I feel that they will get jealous and it will create harsh tension between us, no, I probably won't disclose it. I think I'll keep it close to the chest, just like you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're talking to your mama and your daddy, would you tell them?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
I don't see why not.
Okay. I mean, I'm one of several kids in the family, and I'd be happy to tell my mama and my daddy, but I'd worry that the cat would get out of the bag if I was making a big income. And then I got problems with brothers and sisters and in-laws, and and then the way I perceive it, all of a sudden I'm the one that's supposed to pick up the check, and I don't know. I just don't know if I want to go down that path.
Well, Dave, I think that's another podcast about how someone should spend their money.
Well, that's so true. so true. So true. But that always creates an uncomfortable thing with your bunch of friends or bunch of siblings. Who's gonna make the reach for that check and going through that whole little song and dance. But that's a whole nother podcast unto itself. What about your car? It used to be, it would be difficult for people to figure out how much, your car was worth. You'd have to do research in the classifieds. You'd have to go to the Kelley Blue Book, which means a trip to the library. You'd have to look around. You'd have to do some research. Now it's so easy. You Google it and it pops up. You go to kbb.com and it pops up. People are going to count your money. And part of that is people are going to want to see what your car's worth. And do you think people will check you out? Absolutely, I believe that people will check that out. They go, oh, what kind of car is that? Is that worth more than mine? And I think that leaves open an opportunity to get a really nice looking car that maybe isn't worth as much, especially if you're not looking to brag. But it's so easy to find out. Have you ever checked out the value of someone's car, Nick?
Oh, well, definitely. I've also, I'm skipping ahead, but I've also checked out, how much someone's house is worth. But, with the dissemination of information and the transparency, going back to technology of how easy it is, I mean, why not? Yeah. I like to take my piece of humble pie. I have no problem telling our listeners that I'm a proud owner of my car. I don't rent, or I don't lease, I should say. I don't finance. I bought my car brand new in 2012. My car is 9 years old. I only have 70,000 miles on it, which I'm very proud of.
Nicely played.
And, I don't even know how much it's worth right now. It still runs great. And I'm proud of my car. And so if someone wants to research my car, go ahead. I have nothing to hide.
Yeah. It makes it easier to disclose it when you know that the information's readily available. And in your situation, and in mine too, it's the opportunity to follow the 12th tip was a tip, which was, hey, tell people about your plan, disclose your plan, show them how you're trying to get to financial success.
Wait, Dave,
they will thank you for that.
Dave, what car do you drive again? I forgot.
Well, I got to tell you, I drive a car that I bought that was 4 years old. I bought a car for cash. I bought a car that was 50% of the sticker price. Now, that being said, it's a hell of a car. It's a Tesla. But I didn't pay $100,000 for it. And I put together money for a long period of time. I could have financed it, I suppose, at a much earlier time when a Tesla driving down the street was a really big deal. And I didn't. I held off until I bought it for cash, and I bought it used.
Now, I still remember this. We were right outside your office.
Yeah.
And you must have got it within the last 6 months of that time.
Yeah.
And you're like, Nick, hop in. Let me show you this. And sorry, this is getting off on a tangent, and this is not an ad for Tesla, just saying. And you're like, Nick, you know how fast this goes? And I'm like, no. And you go, put on your seatbelt, watch this. And then you drive down Oxnard, and I'm just like, wow.
And your head
Wow.
slapped back against the headrest. That was a fun
Oh,
day. I
it was
like that.
fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah. But it admittedly, I mean, and I tell people, it's too fast. It's too fast. At the time that it was produced, it was the fastest production car in the world. And it's too fast. When your head slaps back against the headrest, when your eyeballs feel like they're floating a little bit, it's a lot faster than it needs to be. And I got to tell you, after driving it for a number of years now, I could probably do without that feature. I put the pedal to the metal more infrequently, and I don't need to do that. But I got to tell you, when that car was, I had to go to Seattle to find the right car in the right condition and the right age, and I flew up there, test drive it, made arrangements to put it on a truck and bring it down. I really didn't know how fast it could go because I'd only test driven it in Seattle traffic, and it just shocked me when I found a quiet street and stepped on it, because it doesn't burn rubber. The computer senses that, and you go forward so fast, it almost does knock you out. And I don't want to be down in the Tesla at all, but it's too fast.
But also, for full transparency, it's only that fast when you want it to go that fast.
Well, yeah. I mean, have I punched it in the last 2-3 months? Maybe once.
Plead the fifth. Plead the fifth, Dave.
Yeah. Don't send over the cops to my house, Nick. Jeez Louise. Let's talk about houses. Let's flip to something else. What about the value of your car? It used to be, what did you pay for your house? And if you wanted to know what someone paid or what it was worth, you had to talk to a realtor who had to look at the MLS, who had to, do a comparable sales analysis, blah, 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 blah. Now everybody can know the value of your house. I mean, just go to Redfin, go to, any of the Zillow, go to any of these places, and it'll give you a computer analysis of what the value of the house is based upon comparable sales in the neighborhood. It's so easy to know that. I guess it doesn't hurt to talk about it so much anymore, as long as you're doing it in a humble way. And then also you have the opportunity to explain how it hopefully fits into your financial wellness plan.
I mean, Dave, I actually just used Zillow yesterday, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of this one real estate show. And on the show, they have a bunch of Los Angeles realtors. Mm-hmm. And I think it's interesting to see, especially if you're a homeowner, what the comps are around your area. And I think you should be diligent in knowing how much your house is worth. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, you should. I remember back in the day, I'd watch the cable up on the television while I was working out. One of my favorite shows was the Real Estate Channel. And it was just a series of, realtors who had bought time saying, hey, look at this house over on Van Ness Avenue. It's got 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, and, it's worth like $36,000. And I think that was probably a legitimate number back at that time. But I found it fascinating because, it's human nature to count someone else's money. And that's what I was doing. And yes, I was trying to educate myself on the real estate market because eventually we were going to purchase a house. But, there's always that, what is that worth? Oh, I don't believe that. Yes, I do believe that, that kind of a thing. And it's so much easier now to get that information.
Dave, speaking of transparency, so the San Fernando Valley is about 30 miles south of downtown LA, give or take?
Yeah, 30 miles north.
North.
Something. Yeah.
Oh man, living in San Diego.
Yeah, you've been away from the farm too long, my friend.
So I just went online and guess what the median house price is in the San Fernando Valley?
700-800.
As of June 2021, this is according to ABC7.
Okay.
$955,000.
Wow.
Outrageous.
Wow. I don't know how people afford that. It's crazy to me. But
yeah,
I do know that years ago I was talking to my uncle this was on a hike in Yosemite, and he was a realtor. I said, well, how do people afford that? And he says, you know what you do? You make the best decision that you can. You prepare to buy the house, you go in strong with the biggest down that you can, and then you put your head down and work for a bunch of years. And you know what? when you poke your head up and after a bunch of years, you'll probably be in a pretty good spot. Now, since that time, the real estate market has fallen dramatically. Some would say almost collapsed twice. But as long as you're going to hold that property for a long enough period of time, it doesn't matter. I remember we bought a house and 5, 6 years later, 7 years later, it was worth 3 times what we paid almost. And I'm walking around town going, wow, I'm a millionaire. And then it went back to the original purchase price a couple of years after that. I mean, real estate's been pretty volatile, but that's where we lived. And we lived there for 29 years.
But Dave, I also hear real estate's one of the best investments that you can make.
Well, yes. I mean, I don't want to give specific investment advice to anybody, but if somebody's going to be in the same place, if somebody can reasonably afford it, if their income situation is stable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, yes, real estate should be a portion of somebody's portfolio. Should it be all their portfolio? No. Should it be 5% of their portfolio? Perhaps not. But it should be a portion. I mean, I got to tell you, I've watched real estate appreciate. I've watched the stock market appreciate. And I think, a very conservative mix of stocks or bonds has done better than real estate. But does that mean, in fact, significantly better than real estate? But does that mean you don't have any real estate in your portfolio? Does that mean you deliberately stay away from owning a home? Well, it depends upon a lot of factors, but real estate should be part of a regular, normal person's portfolio, it seems to me. But everybody's going to know it. There's no way to hide it. You can't put up a big blanket out front and go, don't look at my real estate.
It's true. And I guess, maybe just I have a layman's experience. Like I said, I'm not a homeowner, but just to know how much rent costs in Southern California and you're putting that money towards equity, right. To me, it seems like a home run.
Yeah, no, I know.
If you can afford it. If you can afford it, that's what it is.
Yeah. I was talking to a guy recently and he was telling me that he had just bought a house and he was a little irritated because everyone in the family wanted the address. And the first thing that they would do is take the address and type it into Redfin, and they knew exactly what the house was, what he was purchasing. And of course, then they extrapolate that on, what income must be and what other assets must be. And that's too much to disclose, but there's no way to stop that. There's just no way. It is what it is at this point. But be humble and make it an appropriate part of your financial wellness plan. And that's about all you can do about that.
Just be humble and kind.
Yeah. Yeah. How about stocks? Now, I don't want to talk about specific stocks because that would be giving financial advice or stock advice, and we can't do that. But it could even be, if you're talking to somebody about stocks that you own, it could even be potentially insider information. But we've talked about some general kinds of things that you've done in terms of trades and what have you. I've talked in general about some stocks over the last almost 200 podcasts. But the value of your stocks, should you talk about that, Nick?
It goes back to my whole premise of knowing your audience. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's the purpose that I'm talking about it? I would say generally, I only speak to people about stocks who are also in the stock market or they're attempting to get into the stock market. Mm-hmm. And I'm more of an educator. But we talked about that in part 1, to educate people. Mm-hmm. Or, I only like discussing ideas with other people if it can help me. And if I speak to you, Dave, we're both in the stock market, we can mm-hmm. help one another. I have mm-hmm. no issue speaking to you about it. But mm-hmm. If someone off the street just comes up to me and says, how much is your stock portfolio worth? I would be kind of, push back. Like, who are you? Like, what are you going to do with my information? Yeah. So I think that principle can be used, across the board.
So maybe you're talking more about general principles or general categories of stocks, not about how much you have.
Agreed. Yes.
I think that's a pretty good guideline, talk generally. I mean, I tell people, hey, back in the day, I bought a couple shares of Apple because the store was busy and it's been kind to me. Past that, nobody's business.
Yeah. But I mean, also, Dave, true or false, we've talked about stocks.
Of course.
And how many times have I asked you, how much is your portfolio worth?
Yep, like never.
I've never.
Because you're cool, because you're appropriate, right? Because I wouldn't tell you, it's none of your damn business.
Well, it's definitely like never. It's zero.
Yeah.
But also, like you said, it's none of my business. And for the information I'm trying to seek, the how much your portfolio worth is of no worth to me. I'd rather know your opinion about Facebook. And I'm just picking stocks at random: Facebook, Google, etc.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. All right. I think we nailed that. What about inheritance? Should you tell people about an inheritance?
I would say no.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is a pretty hard stance for me. I think there's only a negative value to an inheritance, disclosing it, than a positive.
Negative. How so?
I think this will create jealousy of people. And if it doesn't create jealousy, what's the politically correct term for this? For people who want to latch onto you based on your inheritance. I don't know the politically correct term for it, but it's like winning the lottery and all of a sudden you have second cousin twice removed coming and saying hi to you.
Yeah. I know you're bringing up a whole bunch of issues there, but I agree. One, usually an inheritance will be a lump sum. Not always. Sometimes it's an income stream, but more often than not, it's a lump sum. And you talk about it to people, and I think it creates, jealousies.
Yes, exactly.
And I think it creates problems.
And it goes, back to knowing your audience. And I think that should be like one of the main principles, Dave, of this. And that's my takeaway, is just know who you're speaking to. Why does someone want to know about your inheritance? To me, it seems very suspect and very fishy.
Well, I can think of almost no audience that I would want to discuss inheritance with outside of maybe a personal financial advisor.
Or the trustor.
Well, or something like that. Yeah. And the other part of your comment, I'm kind of categorizing your comments here, but the other part of that is everyone's going to, if they know you have an inheritance, everyone all of a sudden is going to want to be your best friend. They're going to want to party with you. They're going to want you to invest in stuff. And it just creates all sorts of difficult conversations.
Or pick up the check, as you said.
Or pick up the check, absolutely. I remember one time we were skiing and we were sitting with the guy on the lift, and he was saying, "Well, how many days have you skied?" Which is another form of currency among ski people. How many days have you skied this year? And he goes, "This is my 106th day." And we went, "Oh, this is our second, because we work for a living still." He goes, "Well, I have an inheritance." And you know what they say, the first generation earns it and the second generation spends it.
Yeah.
And then he skied off, and I thought, what a boob. I don't need to know that. I'd rather talk about, hey, what kind of skis you got, or the weather, or whatever. Yeah. I don't need to know that you're like cruising through life contributing nothing. Oh, was that a little jealousy there? Ooh. You see how that creeps into all of our comments. I can't think of too many people that I would talk about an inheritance. What about lottery winnings? Would you talk to people about lottery winnings?
I think it's piggybacking off the last point.
Yeah.
Well, it's not only a lump sum, but usually, like when I think of lottery, when I think of inheritance, it's not always true, but I just think of a lot of money. Like you could inherit $10,000. I'm not saying $10,000 is not a lot of money. It is. But usually I would say colloquially, when you think of inheritance, it's a lot of money. Just like, if I won $100 on a scratcher, I wouldn't consider it the lottery, but is a scratcher the lottery? Yeah.
That's true.
But where's Brian? Brian should be here for scratcher talk.
Oh, he loves that. He loves that. That's not Brian. The reason that Nick brings it up is because Brian was a big part of the conversation when we talked about lottery winnings and scratchers and that kind of stuff. That's just the family dog waking up and making some noise. But lottery winnings, I don't think I would talk about it that much. Maybe in the smaller realm. But I remember years ago, I consulted with a client who was facing bankruptcy, and he was a lottery winner. And he talked about the fact that the day he won was a curse, because he became so acquainted with family members that he didn't even know that he had. And after he had given away all of his money to all the people, he was still spending money at the lottery winner's rate and now had all this debt and wasn't able to make it go. And it ended up driving into bankruptcy. So I wouldn't talk about lottery winnings. I wouldn't let people know about that. Nick?
I wouldn't, Dave. And I mean, what's interesting, and I feel that I am the anomaly in this, I'm comfortable with my group of friends. I'm comfortable with my family and who I consider my family. I don't have a need to entertain more people that were not there for me when I needed them or who are not there for me right now, unless, they can provide me some benefit to my life and I can provide them some benefit to their life. But, kind of tangential, but, I digress. I don't think I would, Dave, to answer it very succinctly. I don't think I would.
No, me neither. Well, let's land this plane. Let's wrap this up a little bit, because this is the tail end of 2 episodes, part 1 and part 2, talking about how you should talk about your money. And, going back to my 12 tips for talking about your money. 1, do what's right for you. 2, never share your passwords. 3, thinking about scripting your responses in advance. 4, it might be different what you say for work, family, or friends. Number 5, everybody counts your money. Number 6, people love to gossip, so assume whatever you say is going to be everywhere. Number 7, if you're talking about what you make at work, be careful of non-disclosure clauses in your employment agreement. Number 8, if you must talk about your money, be general. Number 9, don't brag. Number 10, don't be judgmental. Number 11, don't try to keep up with the Joneses. And number 12, if you do talk in general, talk about your financial wellness plan. And then summing up today, the assets that you have may have different rules depending upon that kind of asset. Nick and I varied talking about what we would disclose in terms of our salary, car value, house value. Yeah, tell people we both had the same point of view because people are going to find out anyway. Stocks, we said, well, it's more about the types of stocks, not the value of the stocks. And then Nick and I kind of both agreed. Inheritance, lottery winnings, just not a lot of need to talk about that because more bad can come than good from that kind of a discussion. So, I think that's a wrap. Nick, thanks for sticking with us through these 2 episodes last week and this interesting stuff.
I think that's a wrap, Dave. I had such a pleasure.
Yeah, it was good stuff. I enjoyed that a lot. All right, everybody, stick with us. Next week, we're going to talk about something very different. We're going to talk about, are you getting ready for next year? Think about that. This is Dave Hagan, and you've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. If you have a question that you would like Dave to answer on the podcast, go to thefinancialwellnesspodcast.com. You can leave an audio message with one click of a button, or type your message into the question box. Either way, it's sent right to Dave's phone. Remember, Dave will randomly draw from the submitted questions and pick the winner of a free 1-hour personal conversation with Dave to help you achieve your financial goals. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you receive the new episode notifications, or share the podcast via the app with your family and friends. This is your announcer, Nick Appel, wishing you every financial success.